The invitation he never got. James Carter woke up with a pounding headache. His eyes fluttered open, and he found himself staring at a ceiling made of smooth metallic panels. The air smelled different, too clean, too artificial. He sat up quickly, his heart racing. This wasn't his apartment. Where was he? The room was large and circular, with strange glowing symbols on the walls. There were no windows, no doors that he could see. The floor beneath him hummed softly, like a machine running under it. James ran a hand through his messy brown hair, trying to think. The last thing he remembered was falling asleep on his couch after a long day at work. He had been watching an old sci-fi movie with a half-eaten sandwich on his lap. Now he was here. Okay, this is a dream, he muttered to himself. It had to be. But before he could convince himself, a loud voice echoed through the room. The final round begins. James jumped to his feet. The walls in front of him suddenly shimmered and vanished, revealing a massive stadium. Bright neon lights flashed, and an enormous crowd of aliens filled the seats, cheering wildly. James' mouth went dry. Some of the aliens had extra arms. Some had glowing eyes. Some looked like walking insects, and they were all staring at him. A booming voice continued, coming from somewhere above. Introducing the final contestant, a being from the primitive world of Terra, a species known as human. James blinked. What? A giant screen above the stadium flickered to life. It showed a live feed of James, standing there like a confused fool. The audience cheered even louder. Some aliens chanted something he didn't understand. Others laughed, pointing at him like he was some kind of joke. James took a step back. This couldn't be real. Hey, wait, there's been a mistake, he shouted. I don't know what's going on. But his voice was drowned out by the excited crowd. Then the voice boomed again. The final challenge will now begin. A section of the stadium floor slid open. A platform rose up from below, carrying a massive creature. It had thick, armor-like skin, glowing red eyes, and sharp tusks that curved upward. It was at least 10 feet tall, and the moment it saw James, it snarled. James took another step back. Oh no! A bright neon screen lit up in front of him, displaying strange alien text. After a second, the text translated into simple English. Final challenge. Survive the beast. The stadium roared with excitement. Bets were being placed. Alien commentators were speaking in a language James didn't understand. James swallowed hard. He was in a game he never signed up for. And the worst part, he had no idea how to play. The challenge begins. James Carter stood frozen, his heart hammering in his chest. The crowd of strange, alien beings roared with excitement. The stadium lights pulsed in time with their cheers, casting eerie shadows over the massive creature that had just emerged. It was a beast, a monster straight out of a nightmare. The thing had thick, grayish skin that looked tougher than steel. Its long arms ended in razor-sharp claws, and its glowing red eyes locked onto James like a predator sizing up its prey. Thick, curved tusks jutted from its lower jaw, and its breath came out in heavy, steaming puffs, as if it was already excited to crush him. James's mouth went dry. Survive the beast. That was the challenge. Just survive. He had no weapons, no armor, nothing. How was he supposed to fight something that looked like it could rip a car in half? A voice boomed again. Begin. A loud buzzer sounded, and the creature let out a terrifying roar. The crowd erupted in cheers. Some aliens were laughing. Others were placing bets, their screens flashing with numbers and symbols. James barely had time to react. The beast charged. James leaped to the side, just barely avoiding a swipe from those deadly claws. The force of the attack sent dust flying into the air. The ground where he had just stood now had deep claw marks. That could have been my chest. James scrambled to his feet, his brain screaming at him to run. But run where? This wasn't an open arena. It was a trap. The walls were smooth and high. There was no way out. The beast turned and snarled, stalking toward him again. James did the only thing he could think of. He ran. He dashed across the arena, dodging another heavy swing. The beast was fast, but James was smaller, lighter, and quicker. He zigzagged, trying to avoid being an easy target. The crowd booed. Some alien commentators were speaking in an unknown language, but their tone was clear. They thought he was a coward. James gritted his teeth. You want to fight? You think I'm just going to let this thing kill me? He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't some sci-fi action hero. But he was smart. His eyes darted around looking for anything that could help him. The floor was metallic, smooth, but it had panels. The lights above flickered slightly. A power source. A weak point. James kept running, waiting for the right moment. The beast growled in frustration and charged again, faster this time. James faked left but dodged right at the last second. The creature couldn't stop in time. It slammed into the wall. The stadium shook. The crowd gasped. James didn't waste time. He sprinted toward a corner where he had spotted a loose panel on the floor. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. The beast recovered, shaking off the impact. It roared in anger, now furious. It wasn't just hunting him anymore. It was in rage. James reached the panel and stomped on it. It shifted, loose. His heart pounded. One chance. The beast charged again, its claws raised to tear him apart. James waited until the last possible second. Then he jumped to the side and, using all his strength, kicked the loose panel. It slid away, revealing wires and sparking machinery underneath. The beast was too focused on James to notice. Its massive foot slammed down directly into the exposed power source. A surge of energy exploded upward. The creature let out a deafening screech as electricity ripped through its body. Sparks flew, and the stadium lights flickered. The crowd gasped in shock. The beast collapsed. Smoke curled from its body. Its red eyes dimmed. Its massive form twitched once, then fell completely still. Silence. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the voice boomed again, this time, filled with absolute disbelief. The human has won. The stadium erupted. Shouts, cheers, arguments. Some aliens looked furious. Others looked amazed. Huge holographic screens replayed the moment again and again, the human outsmarting the beast. James stood there, panting, hands on his knees. His entire body was shaking from adrenaline. Did I just win? He slowly looked up. The flashing screen above him displayed his face with a new title. Champion. James swallowed hard. What had he just gotten himself into? The impossible victory. James Carter stood in the center of the arena, his chest rising and falling as he struggled to catch his breath. The beast, his would-be executioner, lay motionless, smoke curling from its body where the electrical surge had struck. The air still smelled like burnt metal and ozone. Silence filled the massive stadium. For a moment, James thought that maybe, just maybe, these aliens hadn't expected him to survive. Then the explosion of noise hit. The crowd roared, some in excitement, some in rage. Giant holographic screens replayed the last moments again and again. James dodging, James kicking the panel loose, the beast stepping into the exposed wires, the flash of electricity, its body crashing to the ground. It wasn't just a victory, it was an upset. James wiped sweat from his forehead. His body was still shaking, not just from adrenaline, but from the sheer unrealness of everything. He had gone from napping on his couch to fighting for his life in some kind of alien gladiator game. And now he was apparently the champion. A booming voice cut through the stadium. The same announcer from before, now sounding completely stunned. The human has won? Even the announcer didn't sound like they believed it. The stadium lights flickered as a massive holographic scoreboard updated itself. James' name. Well, more like Human Carter in badly translated alien script, flashed across the screen. Below it, symbols shifted rapidly, showing his opponent's status. DVFEATED. A deep mechanical hum vibrated through the air as the floor panels shifted again. The beast's massive, lifeless body sank into the ground as another metallic door slid open beneath it. Gone. As if it had never been there. James took a shaky breath. His heart still hadn't slowed. What now? A blue-skinned alien in golden robes floated onto the field, carried by some kind of anti-gravity platform. Its long, insect-like fingers tapped against a glowing tablet as it studied James with 6 blinking eyes. Impossible, the alien muttered, more to itself than anyone else. No human has ever been entered into the trials of Sarthan before. How did you? James shook his head, still breathless. Yeah, I'd really love to know that myself. The alien ignored him and looked up at the roaring crowd. Its 6 fingers moved rapidly over the tablet, sending glowing signals into the air. The stadium's energy shifted. A large golden symbol flickered into existence above James, hovering in the air. It pulsed, then locked into place. James had no idea what it meant, but from the crowd's reaction, it was important. The announcer's voice boomed again. As PERTE ancient release, the final CHAM Pioan, he is BE and Furowinid. A wave of golden light washed over James. It didn't hurt, but it felt strange, like a weight settling onto his shoulders. The blue-skinned alien turned back to James, his 6 eyes narrowing. As per tradition, your reward will now be granted. James blinked. Reward. The crowd hushed. The energy in the stadium changed. Anticipation, excitement, tension. A second golden platform floated onto the field. Standing on it was a woman. Well, sort of. She was tall, taller than James by at least half a foot, with long white hair braided down her back. Her armor gleamed under the stadium lights. Dark steel plates, sharp and elegant, like something between a knight and a warlord. She had fierce, glowing violet eyes and markings across her arms that looked almost like battle scars. Her expression, pure murder. James immediately did not like this. The blue-skinned alien smiled. As champion, you have won the greatest honor in the trials. James exhaled. Please don't say what I think you're about to say. The alien ignored him. You have won the hand of Princess Lyra of the Xelvari Empire. The stadium erupted again. James' brain froze. I'm sorry. I won what now? The announcer's voice boomed again, the golden holographic script flashing above his head. Champions Purizi. Royal marriage. James stared at the glowing words, then at the very angry alien woman now standing just a few feet away. Absolutely not, she growled, her voice sharp and commanding. I refuse. Great. Me too. James agreed immediately, raising both hands. I mean, no offense, you seem, nice. But I don't even know what's happening. I didn't sign up for this, and I definitely. A deep, heavy silence settled over the arena. James suddenly got the horrible feeling that he'd just said something very, very wrong. The blue-skinned alien's 6 eyes blinked. Rejecting the trial's reward is a violation of the ancient pact. James frowned. Okay, and that means? Liara clenched her jaw. It means you just insulted the entire Xelvari Empire. James felt his stomach drop. That's bad, isn't it? Liara crossed her arms, staring at him like she wanted to stab him on the spot. The blue-skinned alien sighed, looking genuinely disappointed as he tapped something onto his glowing tablet. By law, a refusal of the reward is grounds for. The symbols on the giant holographic screen changed again. CHALNG of honor. James groaned. Oh, come on. I literally just finished a fight. Lara turned to face him fully now, cracking her knuckles. It's not a fight. she said coldly. "It's a duel. To the death." The stadium exploded with cheers. James let out a long, slow breath. "I hate space," he muttered. The buzzer sounded again. The next round had already begun. The prize: a bride. James Carter had been through a lot in the last hour. 1 minute, he was napping on his couch. The next, he was thrown into an alien death arena, forced to fight a giant monster he had no business surviving. Somehow, through sheer luck and quick thinking, he had won. Now he was facing a duel to the death against a woman he had apparently won as a bride. James didn't know what was worse, the fact that this was happening at all, or the fact that Princess Lyra clearly wanted to rip his head off. The stadium shook with excitement. Alien spectators chanted in their strange languages. Some banged on the walls of their booths, eager for blood. Others exchanged bets on whether James would last more than 30 seconds. He didn't like those odds. Standing across from him, Lyra's glowing violet eyes narrowed as she adjusted the grip on her weapons, 2 curved blades humming with energy. She looked like a seasoned warrior, her armored form built for battle, not ceremony. James raised a hand. "So before we do this, can I just ask, is there no other way out of this?" Lyra sneered. "Fight or die. Human. That is the law of the trials." James sighed. "Yeah, I was afraid you'd say that." The buzzer screamed. Lyra moved first. James barely had time to react before she vanished. His eyes widened. No, she didn't disappear. She was just that fast. A whistle of air cut past his ear as she struck. James dove backward, just narrowly avoiding a blade slicing where his head had been a second ago. His heart slammed against his ribs. Lyra didn't stop. She spun, her second blade sweeping low. James stumbled back, almost tripping as he scrambled to avoid the impossibly fast assault. "She's toying with me." She was testing him, pushing him back, seeing how long he would last before she finished him. James had no weapon, no training. What he did have, though, was his brain. He couldn't beat her in a fight. That much was obvious, but he didn't have to. He just had to end the fight another way. James spotted something, a slight gap in her stance when she stepped forward. The way she balanced her weight. Her speed was her strength, but also a weakness. If he could use that against her. Lyra lunged. James dodged left, but intentionally too slow. Her eyes gleamed in triumph. She took the bait. She shifted mid-attack, correcting her swing to counter his movement. But James was already moving again. At the last second, he dropped low and twisted, grabbing her ankle. Lyra's expression shifted from confidence to shock as James yanked her foot off balance. She had been going full speed, too fast to stop herself. Her own momentum betrayed her. Lyra crashed hard, rolling across the arena floor. The crowd gasped. James scrambled to his feet, panting. His gamble had worked. Lyra pushed herself up, furious. She locked eyes with him, her grip on her weapons tightening. "You dare." James raised his hands. "Look, I really don't want to fight you, all right?" She growled. "Then die quickly." She charged again. James acted before she could swing. He sidestepped and ***, threw himself into her path. ***, not attacking, but colliding. The impact knocked them both down. Before she could react, James did something unthinkable. He grabbed *** her wrist, ***, and held it up. The stadium froze. The announcer's voice boomed. "The human has made contact." James frowned. "Wait, what?" Lyra's eyes widened. Her mouth opened slightly, like she was about to say something. Before she could, the stadium lights shifted. The holographic scoreboard above flashed violently as the alien text rearranged. CHALENG interrupted. Vic to ori CLANED. The entire arena went silent. Then, chaos. James sat up, confused. Lyra's breathing was uneven. She stared at their joined hands, then ripped herself away, standing stiffly. She didn't attack. She just stood there, fists clenched. The blue-skinned alien official from before floated onto the field again, looking pale. It seems the human has accidentally invoked the right of acceptance. James blinked. The what now? Lyra was rigid. Her shoulders were shaking. The official cleared his throat. By the ancient laws of the Xelvari, a duel for honor may be halted if one party, through direct physical contact, accepts the engagement, whether knowingly or not. James stared. You're joking. The official shook his head. No. In the eyes of the trials, you have chosen your bride. Lyra's breathing hitched. James put a hand to his forehead. So what you're telling me is, I won again, by accident. The crowd lost it. Some aliens screamed in outrage. Others were roaring with laughter. Some were even clapping. The official continued. According to tradition, the princess cannot deny a victory sealed in combat. James slowly turned toward Lyra. She was seething. Her jaw clenched. Her hands trembled. Then, in a voice that was dangerously calm, she said, I will kill you for this. James groaned. Great, just what I needed. An angry alien wife who wants me dead. The stadium erupted once more. And just like that, James Carter's life changed forever. Escape or acceptance? James Carter had been in bad situations before. He'd once gotten lost in the woods as a kid. He'd once been stuck in an elevator with a broken AC for 3 hours. He'd once accidentally replied "you too" when a waitress told him to enjoy his meal. But nothing compared to this. Because at this moment, he was standing in an alien coliseum, surrounded by a crowd of thousands, being declared the official fiancé of a 7-foot-tall warrior princess who looked like she wanted to rip his arms off. James exhaled sharply. This can't be real. Yet the massive golden hologram flashing above him said otherwise. The CHAMPIONs CLAIMHAAs BEEN HCCPTED. Pure pair of Avor Royal CEREMOMI. The crowd was going insane. Some aliens cheered, others roared in outrage, and a few were literally banging their heads against the walls. James, still dazed, turned toward Princess Lyra. She stood stiffly, fists clenched so tight her knuckles were turning white. Her glowing violet eyes burned with barely contained fury. James took a cautious step back. Look, I swear, I didn't mean to. Lyra whirled on him so fast that he flinched. You will undo this. James raised both hands. Yeah, I'd love to. Just tell me how. And you can't, came a voice from behind. James and Lyra both turned. The blue-skinned alien official floated toward them, still staring at his glowing tablet. His expression was sympathetic, but his voice was firm. The moment you made physical contact and did not immediately declare forfeit, the match was sealed, he explained. In the eyes of the Xelvari Empire, your engagement is now unbreakable. Lyra exhaled slowly. Her hands trembled at her sides, but she didn't explode. Not yet. Instead, she closed her eyes for a long moment, and when she opened them, James saw something worse than rage. Resignation. Fine, she said quietly. James blinked. Wait, what? Lyra took a slow step forward, then another, until she was right in front of him. The Colosseum hushed. She leaned in slightly, just enough that James could see the sharp edges of her jaw, the tension in her muscles, the barely restrained disgust in her expression. I cannot refuse, she said, her voice low and deadly. But know this, human. I would rather die than be bound to someone weak. James opened his mouth, then snapped it shut. Because for a brief moment, he saw something in her eyes. Not just anger, not just hatred, but fear. Not of him, but of what this meant for her people, for everything she had built her life on. James suddenly had the strangest thought. Maybe she was just as trapped as he was. The announcer's voice boomed again. Prepare for the bonding rites. Two massive golden doors rumbled open at the far end of the Colosseum. Beyond them, a long, elegant corridor stretched forward, lined with glowing symbols, a pathway leading to what James could only assume was the royal temple. The blue-skinned official gave them both a deep nod. Proceed. James hesitated. And if I don't? The official sighed. Then, per Selvari tradition, you will be executed for dishonoring the royal family. James threw his hands in the air. Of course I will, because that's completely reasonable. The official shrugged. Tradition is tradition. James turned back to Lara. Okay, you must have some way out of this, right? Liara glared at him. If I did, do you think I would still be standing here? Fair point. The Colosseum crowd watched in eerie silence. The moment stretched. Then, with an exhausted sigh, James muttered, "Screw it," and started walking. Liara stiffened, but after a second she followed. Together, under the watchful eyes of an entire alien world, they stepped through the golden doors. The royal temple. The moment they crossed the threshold, the noise of the Colosseum vanished. It was quiet, almost too quiet. The hallway stretched before them, glowing rooms lighting the walls with soft golden light. Strange symbols pulsed beneath their feet, shifting and twisting as they walked. James glanced at Lara. She hadn't spoken since they entered. Her jaw was tight, her gaze fixed forward. James exhaled slowly. Look, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. She didn't respond. I mean it, he continued. I don't know how I got into this situation. I don't want to force you into anything. If there's a way out, I'll find it. Liara stopped walking. James took another step before realizing she wasn't beside him anymore. He turned back. She was staring at him. But this time, her expression wasn't just anger. It was curiosity. You speak as though you have a choice, she murmured. James frowned. Don't I? Liara let out a bitter laugh. You think this is about you. This is about my people, my empire. If I refuse this bond, it will be seen as a declaration of dishonor. James swallowed. And that's bad. She gave him a sharp look. If I dishonor my family, they will not only exile me, they will hunt me. James' stomach dropped. It wasn't just marriage. It was politics, power, survival. For the first time, he really understood. This wasn't just his problem. It was hers. He exhaled. Then we find a way to fix this, together. Liara blinked. For the first time, she looked genuinely surprised. Before she could answer, the golden lights around them flared. A deep, ancient voice rumbled through the air. The bonding ceremony begins. James turned back toward the end of the hallway, where a massive stone altar now stood, glowing with energy. A feeling of finality settled over him. He had no idea what was coming next. But one thing was clear. James Carter was no longer just a man. He was now tied to an empire. And if he wasn't careful, it would get him killed. A battle for honor. James Carter had no idea what he was doing. Scratch that. He had no idea how he got here, standing at the center of an ancient temple on an alien planet, facing what looked like a stone altar pulsating with raw energy. Behind him, Princess Lyra stood stiff, her hands clenched into fists. Her entire body was tense, rigid, like a warrior preparing for battle. In front of them, a group of robed figures floated above the ground, their elongated heads crowned with golden circlets. Their eyes glowed faintly as they stared at James, judging him, analyzing him. One of them raised a skeletal hand. Step forward, champion. James hesitated. Yeah, see, I have a problem with that word. I feel like there's been a mistake. The ground beneath him shook. Symbols lit up across the temple floor, shifting and twisting, forming intricate glowing paths that led directly to the altar. The air vibrated with something ancient, something powerful. James sighed. Right. Of course. No takebacks. Liara didn't move. James turned to her. You are coming. She inhaled slowly, her gaze never leaving the altar. You do not understand what is about to happen. James swallowed. Is it going to kill me? Liara's lips twitched. Not yet. James sighed. That's not comforting. Still, she finally stepped forward, walking beside him as they approached the glowing altar. The lead priest, the tallest of the robed figures, extended his arms. The bonding rites are sacred, he intoned. A ceremony that has not been broken in 1,000 years. James frowned. So, no pressure then. Liara shot him a sharp look, but the priests ignored him. The lead priest gestured to the altar. The trial must be completed. Only then will the bond be sealed. James blinked. Wait, another trial. I thought the fight was the trial. Liara's expression hardened. That was merely an acceptance. This is the true test. James exhaled. I swear, this is the worst game show I've ever been on. The lead priest ignored him again and raised his arms. The temple rumbled. The air split apart, and before James could react, he and Liara were somewhere else. The arena of honor. James stumbled as the world around him changed. The stone temple was gone. Instead, he and Liara now stood in a massive open battlefield under a blood-red sky. Dark monolithic structures jutted from the ground like the bones of an ancient war god. The wind howled, carrying the echoes of old battles long forgotten. James swallowed. I don't like this. Liara's expression was unreadable. This is the arena of honor, the final test. James turned in a slow circle. The arena stretched farther than his eyes could see. The ground was marked with scorch marks, broken weapons, and old scars of combat. Okay, he said cautiously. And what exactly do we have to? A deep roar shook the air. James froze. From the shadows of the battlefield, something massive emerged. It was twice the size of the beast he had fought before, covered in dark, spiked armor, its eyes glowing like molten lava. In its claws, it held a massive war blade, crackling with energy. James' stomach dropped. I am so tired of fighting monsters. Liara exhaled sharply. It is not just a monster. James turned to her. Oh, fantastic. Please, tell me it gets worse. Liara's gaze hardened. It is a guardian, a warrior spirit of the Tselveri ancestors. It has tested every royal bloodline for generations. James swallowed. And what happens if we lose? Liara's jaw clenched. Then we die. James threw his hands up. Why is that always the royally? Before anyone could answer, the guardian moved. And it moved fast. James barely had time to react before the massive war blade sliced down, carving through the battlefield with terrifying force. The ground exploded. James and Liara were thrown backward, rolling across the dirt. The impact rattled his bones. James groaned, pushing himself up. Okay. That sucked. Liara was already moving, her body twisting gracefully as she dodged another attack. Her twin blades clashed against the Guardian's weapon, sending a shockwave through the air. James watched in awe. She was incredible. She moved like a dancer, fluid, precise, deadly. Every strike was calculated. Every dodge was perfect. James, on the other hand, he was completely useless. Liara's voice snapped through the air. Movie, human. James snapped out of it just in time to duck as the Guardian's massive war blade nearly took his head off. He rolled to the side, barely avoiding the next swing. His mind raced. He couldn't fight this thing. Not like Liara. But maybe he didn't have to. His eyes darted across the battlefield, scanning the broken ruins, the scattered debris. He needed an opening, a weakness. Then he saw it. The Guardian's armor. It was thick, except for one spot. A single exposed section between its neck and shoulder. A weak point. James' heart pounded. Lyra. Can you hit that gap in its armor? She didn't look at him. I do not take orders from you, human. James clenched his teeth. Fine. Then just listen. Lyra hesitated. The Guardian charge. James ran toward it. Lyra's eyes widened. What are you doing? James dodged left, then right, drawing the Guardian's attention. It turned, just slightly, exposing its weak spot. James shouted. Now. Lyra didn't hesitate. She moved like lightning, a blur of steel and fury. Her blade struck true. The Guardian let out a roar of pain. Its body staggered. Energy crackled through its armor, collapsing inward. With a final, shuddering breath, the massive warrior fell. Silence. Then, the arena disappeared. That's kick in the temple. James gasped. The world snapped back into focus. They were back in the temple. The priests stared. The air hummed with power. The bonding ceremony was complete. The lead priest spoke solemnly. You have fought together. You have proven your worth. The temple walls glowed with golden light. The bond is sealed. James blinked. Wait, that's it. We win, and now we're married. Lyra said nothing. Her eyes were locked on James. Not with hatred, not with fury, but with something else. Something new, something dangerous. And for the first time, James wasn't sure if he wanted to run. The human king. James Carter had done the impossible. Again. Just hours ago, he had been a regular guy, a human with no knowledge of alien customs, no combat training, and no reason to be fighting for his life in a stadium filled with thousands of bloodthirsty spectators. But here he was, standing beside Princess Lyra, the fiercest warrior of the Selvari Empire, inside a temple older than Earth's recorded history, and apparently, he was now her husband. James swallowed hard as the golden glow of the temple dimmed, signaling the completion of the bonding rites. The robed priests floating above the altar turned toward them, their glowing eyes unreadable. The lead priest extended his skeletal hand. The ritual is complete. The bond is sealed in blood, battle, and honor. James glanced at Lyra. She hadn't moved. Her violet eyes were locked on the altar, her face unreadable. James cleared his throat. So what happens now? The priest straightened. Now, you rule. James blinked. I'm sorry. What? The crowd in the temple vowed. James took a step back. No. That's not how this works. I'm not. The champion of the trial stands beside the royal heir, the priest interrupted. By sacred law, the bond is more than marriage. It is a claim to the throne. James' stomach plummeted. His brain went blank. Lyra finally looked at him. And she looked stunned. She hadn't known this either. The realization hit James like a punch to the gut. They had both been played. The entire bonding rite had been a trap. Not a test of loyalty. A test of leadership. And they had both passed. The robed figures descended from their floating platforms, forming a circle around them. The lead priest stepped closer. You have proven yourselves in battle. You have survived where others have failed. You have claimed victory by blood and by blade. The bond is complete. And so, he lifted his hands. The empire is now yours. The Surodoan and he chains. The temple trembled as the final seal was activated. A massive stone door at the end of the chamber rumbled open, revealing a throne room. And at its center, a crown. A jagged obsidian crown, floating above a pedestal, wrapped in golden energy. James stared. He turned to Lyra. She hadn't moved, but her breathing was shallow. What the hell is this? James whispered. Liara finally spoke. "It is the throne of Selvar." James looked at her. "You knew about this." She exhaled. "I knew that the bonding rite was sacred. I knew that no outsider had ever been part of it, but I did not know." She trailed off, her gaze locked on the floating crown. James followed her stare. The golden energy around the crown pulsed with something ancient, something alive. The lead priest gestured toward it. "Step forward, heirs of the Empire." James looked at Liara. "After you." She hesitated. For the first time, James saw something in her that didn't look like a warrior, a princess, or a killing machine. He saw uncertainty. She took a slow step forward. James followed. As they approached the throne, the golden energy reacted to their presence. It shifted, twisting, stretching, almost like it was waiting. Then, as if responding to an unspoken command, the crown split into two. One half hovered before Lara. The other floated toward James. He felt his heartbeat in his ears. "I don't want this," James muttered. Liara inhaled deeply. "Neither do I." The lead priest's voice rang through the chamber. "You do not have a choice." James clenched his fists. "Of course I don't." The golden energy wrapped around them, lifting them slightly off the ground. James felt heat pulse through his veins, like fire burning just beneath his skin. Images flashed in his mind. Wars, victories, betrayals, ancient rulers. The weight of an empire. Then, the light exploded outward. The crowd in the temple bowed as one. James fell to his knees, gasping. Liara was beside him, clutching her head. She exhaled sharply, her muscles tensed as she absorbed the weight of centuries of history. The lead priest's voice boomed. "Behold the rulers of Xelvar." The temple shook with the force of the declaration. James looked up, breathing hard. Liara turned toward him. And for the first time, they weren't enemies. They weren't strangers. They were tied together, bound by a throne neither of them wanted, a responsibility neither of them asked for, and a future neither of them could escape. Aftermath. The human king. The throne room was silent. Liara stood beside him, her expression unreadable. James finally broke the silence. "So, we're in charge now." Liara inhaled slowly. "It appears so." James rubbed his temples. "And if we say no?" She shook her head. "The Empire will see it as weakness. If we refuse, we will be challenged. Assassins, coups, civil war." James groaned. "This is why I hate politics." Liara sighed. She stepped closer, her expression softer than before. "James Carter." He blinked. Yes." She studied him for a moment. "You are not what I expected." James let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, I get that a lot." She hesitated. Then, for the first time, she extended her hand. James looked at it, then back at her. He exhaled and shook her hand. The bond was sealed, not just by force, but by choice. And for the first time since this insane journey started, James didn't feel completely alone. The stars stretched infinitely beyond the palace. James stood on the balcony, staring at the twin moons hanging above the capital city. Behind him, Liara approached. He turned. She crossed her arms. "Are you afraid?" James smirked, terrified. She exhaled. "Me too." James looked back at the stars. "So what now?" Liara was silent for a long moment. Then, with a small, determined smile, she answered, "We rule." The city below shimmered with golden lights. And thus began the reign of the most unexpected rulers the galaxy had ever seen.